Neighbours has been dropped by Channel 5, putting the long-running Australian soap opera's future under threat. The network announced earlier it would stop showing the programme later this year after airing it for more than a decade. The TV critic Scott Bryan told me what's behind the soap facing such an uncertain future.
A lot of it is down to the reason why Neighbours is under threat is because of the unique way that Neighbours ends up being on TV. Unlike many shows which are shown around the world and then are kind of shared across different broadcasters, Neighbours is really only, its core audience is in the UK, much more popular here than it is in Australia currently. So the issue is that Channel 5 have decided that it costs too much. They are focusing a lot more on their later evening schedule. They're trying to go for an older demographic than I think what Neighbours currently attracts. So the issue is if Australia are not able to find another broadcaster after Channel 5 ditches it, then it means that they think the show would not be able to continue at all. And I guess that's the issue. I find very sort of strong similarities between this and when Big Brother was on Channel 5, because of course that's a very expensive show to produce, and of course there is still an audience that would want to watch that show too, but no broadcaster is willing to go and take up the cost to keep it running.
And of course it is a programme that has launched the careers of many huge global names. I mean, obviously the biggest of them, Kylie Minogue, Jason Donovan, but others as well.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, Margot Robbie, Russell Crowe was in a few episodes along with Liam Hemsworth. I mean, I see it in the UK being very similar to Doctors. You know, it's on in the middle of the day. People might not see it as being the most core program, but it's there to spark off the future careers of many people, giving them the exposure and for time. And I also think it's just a show that's been so much part of a tea time routine. It was for me in the noughties, directly after Newsround with Lizzo Mzimba, bang straight on to Neighbours. And even though some of the storylines could be fairly ridiculous at times, there was of course the time when Susan slipped on milk, banged her head and thought she was a teenager. There was the time when Marlene went on a cruise and never came back. There was the time when Harold returned after being presumed dead, and then he had amnesia as well, that was only able to remember his memory when another character said Jelly Belly, and of course Bouncer's dream, the time that we saw a dream from the perception of one of the show's famous dogs. But the show also managed to have hard-hitting storylines as well, and I think it's those storylines when there were far fewer channels were much more connected to where we were when we were young. So having the loss of this show is not just because of the stars in it, I think it's also because it makes us feel nostalgic for our own younger TV viewing experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's it for me, Scott, because as you described, it was part of the evening routine. 5:35, BBC One, when it was on BBC One, after school, after Newsround, after Blue Peter, then it would be Neighbours time. And I just wonder whether it's symptomatic of the fact that now appointment to view TV, yes, it happens for some of the big Saturday night shows, but it's less a part of people's daily routine than perhaps it once was.
Yeah, and I think the soaps have been struggling a little bit to get the next generation of people on board, because soaps used to be something that used to be just kind of there for us to kind of get into. The fact that they never really had a beginning, they never really had an end, kind of meant that you were able to latch on at any moment. And I think some soaps have been really struggling because what seems to be the appeal right now are these very high-end, very expensive dramas that really get millions of us watching at the same time. I still think that there is some plan, some longevity for linear TV schedules. Of course, we only just had BBC Three coming back in the last week, which shows that the BBC at least thinks that they have a long-term future rather than a blip. But I think you're right. It's the daytime shows, the early shows, the shows that kind of are on as part of our general day-to-day that are going to be very much at risk over the next few years. But trust me, there is a concerted campaign to keep Neighbours on board. I think this is not going to be the end we're going to hear to this story.
We shall see. I have to say, I was fortunate enough to go and visit the set a few years ago.
I saw your photos. Yes. I saw your photos on Twitter.
And the biggest revelation of all is when they told me that Erinsborough, the fictional area, is an anagram of Neighbours itself.
No, I didn't know this.
There you go. Okay, I feel. If you didn't know that, okay, revelation for the nation watching. Scott, go and rearrange the letters. I promise you, it's true.
I don't believe you. I'm going to try it now. I'm going to try it now. So keep me on camera whilst I work this out.
Do it. We'll come back to you later. Scott, thank you very much. Good to talk to you. Scott Bryan, their TV critic. Yes, and quite a few have tweeted me to point out that it is actually or Neighbours that it is an anagram of. Thank you for that. Time now for a look at the weather with Elise.